Still standing. You'll take the University of Calabar song. Still standing. Hello, I think we should sing. Let's go. 1, 2, go. Near the broad expanse of Nigeria's sky.
Neath the broad expanse of Nigeria's sky stands a school with a vision bright, ever holding the banner of knowledge. I will go forward by wisdom's might. All hail to the alma mater. We have come from near and far to unite in Calabar. We'll work to build our alma mater, University of Calabar. May our quest for knowledge in every field have its purpose to serve mankind. With the fervent hope that our efforts yield fruit for all who will come behind. All hail to the alma mater. We have come from near and far to unite in Calabar. We'll work to build our alma mater, University of Calabar. Mighty God, from whom all knowledge comes, let the wisdom in us overflow. May the knowledge gained in our campus here guide our steps as we onward go. All hail to the alma mater. We have come from near and far to unite in Calabar. We'll work to build our alma mater, University of Calabar.
This is University of Calabar.
Invite Reverend Joseph Ajo to please lead us in an opening prayer. Reverend Joseph. Okay, in his absence. Okay.
Our Father, we are grateful to you this afternoon for giving us this wonderful moment. Stay together and listen to your servant. Bring out what he has studied and contributed all over the years. We thank you for every member who has come and pray your presence to be with us. Take the glory. We are asking in Jesus' name.
Thank you so much. You may please have your seat. May I, with Jesus' joy, welcome us to the 151st Inaugural Lecture of the University of Calabar. As you all know, Inaugural Lecture is a forum where professors pay their debt and share in the knowledge gained in the course of their researches. And so, without wasting much time, may I recognize dignitaries on the high table and those that are here to grace today's inaugural lecture. First to be recognized is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Calabar, Professor Florence Obi, who is represented by the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Linkages and Collaborations, Professor Chukwuemeka Okafo. Please put your hands together for him. I may also recognize here present the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Professor Tony Inyang. Please put your hands together for him. Also to be recognized is the Registrar of this great institution, Dr. Mrs. Chukwuka Icha. Please put your hands together. And may I recognize here present the Chairman, Committee of Deans, Professor Inang Uda. Please put your hands together for him. Also here present is the man that will take up the citation of the inaugural lecturer, and he's no other person than the Honorable Commissioner for Education, Akwa Ibom State, Professor Ubong Umo. Please put your hands together for him. And may I recognize a professor of Atlantic history, an international scholar, a professor of development studies. He is the head of Department History and International Studies, Faculty of Art, who is the 151st Inaugural Lecturer. And he's no other person than Professor David Lishilinimle Imbua. Please put your hands together for him. He will be properly introduced in the course of this lecture. And may I recognize former Vice Chancellors here present. I can cite His Excellency, Professor Varaisu is here. Can we put our hands together for him? You're welcome, sir. And may I recognize another former Vice Chancellor, Professor Zana Akpago. Please put your hands together, he's here. Can we celebrate him more? And may I recognize here present the Provost, College of Medical Sciences, Professor Ngum. Please put your hands together. We are having an event right now. Provost, School of Postgraduate Studies, Professor Iyung Ubanga Iyung. Put your hands together. Provost, College of Education, Professor German Ifa Anabugu. Please put your hands together for them. And may I recognize particularly the Dean, Faculty of Arts, Professor Chike Ikeubara. You're welcome, sir. Also here present are deans of other faculties, directors of institutes, heads of departments and units here present. Please, you're all recognized. Am I recognize erudite professors here present, past inaugural lecturers, the chairman, ceremonial committee, Emeritus Professor Chris Mwamo. Put your hands together. Emeritus Professor Ime Usim. Am I recognize invited guests, members of the university community, Malabite and Malabresis? These are all recognized. It's now time to recognize the immediate family of our 151st inaugural lecturer. First to be recognized is his spouse, his better half, the love of his life, sugar in his tea when he takes his tea. Aww. And may I recognize here present Honorable Dr. Juliet D. Imbua. Please put your hands together. That is the jewel of his life. The children are also here. And may I recognize, as I call you, just stand and wave to the crowd, Beshinyin Dave Imbua. Please put your hands together. Enonim Dave Imbua. Ikbehunim Dave Imbua. And Akawinim Dave Imbua. Please put your hands together. The siblings are not left out. May I recognize her presence? Teresa Imbua, George Imbua, Christiana Imbua. Please, if you're here, just stand and wave. Moses Imbua, Silvanus Imbua, Mercy Imbua, Agnes Imbua, Christopher Imbua. Please, you all recognize. His clergies are here. Reverend Dr. Barrister Ime Oka, or Reverend Dr. Mrs. Joy Imeoji. Please, you all recognize. There's someone who piloted his academic career, Ambassador Professor Ukun Idet. We are of blessed memory. Other families members here present, please, you all recognize. My recognize, I don't know if he's here, Senator Professor Sandy Ono, generally known as Caterpillar, if he's here. Professor Zana Pagu, Chief Honorable Dr. Peter Banke, if he's here. Professor Joseph Boucher, please put your hands together for him. And may I recognize council members of the Historical Society of Nigeria. They are here. Can we put our hands together for them? Please, you're all recognized. And today's topic says Calabar in the Atlantic Mirror, Myths, Misconceptions, and Realities. May I now hand over the microphone to the registrar to please continue the further proceedings of this inaugural lecture as we put our hands together for her.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me now to call on the chairman of this occasion, who is ably represented by Professor Peter Okafor, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Linkage, and Collaboration, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you. The principal officers, the Dean of Deans, the Chairman Committee of Deans. Please also permit me to recognize Professor Ivara Isu, the Vice Chancellor that employed me. May I also recognize Professor Zana Bagu, the Vice Chancellor that announced my promotion to the position of professor. Deans and directors, past inaugural lecturer, especially the 150th inaugural lecturer. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the 151st inaugural lecture of the University of Calabar. When I heard the topic, I saw two things. I saw Atlantic and I saw mirror. So I was actually thinking that we're going to look at Calabar from the mirror of the Atlantic Ocean. But somehow it seems that's exactly what we're going to do. I think so. Yeah, because it has a lot to do with slave trade and other things, and how the white men came and deceived us, and how they carried our things, our people, oil, etc., etc. From the picture that I'm seeing here, that's what the topic is telling me. But today, I believe that a very smart young man, an intelligent person, who happened to be my citation reader and my very good friend, is going to tell us about the myth. He's going to tell us about the misconceptions, and he's going to tell us about the reality. So I believe by the time we leave this hall today, we'll be more educated about the Calabar and all the activities that happened in Calabar many years ago, because he's a powerful historian. He's going to tell us the history of the things that happened then. May I also use this opportunity to let us know that I married his sister, and he also married my sister. Thank you very much.
It's the day for connections on both sides. Without waste of time, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the chairman, I will now invite Professor Ubong Esien Umo to read the citation of the 151st inaugural lecturer, Professor David Imbua.
Very distinguished chairman of this occasion, the registrar, the 151st Inaugural Lecture, the management of the University of Calabar, former vice chancellors here present, council members of the Historical Society of Nigeria. My name is Ubong Essien Umo. I stand the privilege to read the citation of Professor David Imbua. And please, before this heavy concentration of diverse scholars, students, and well-wishers, I would first appeal that the 151st Inaugural Lecturer, Professor David Imbua, please stand up. Stand out and remain outstanding until the completion of the reading of this citation. Madam Vice Chancellor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a singular honor, a rare privilege, and an extraordinary joy for me to introduce a scholar and a friend whose journey I have had the privilege to witness closely, a man whose life has been intertwined with mine in ways that seemed almost divinely orchestrated. Professor David Imbua and I were both fortunate to be mentored by the legendary ambassador, Professor Okone Deduya, a scholar of the highest distinction, whose pride in our achievement was boundless. Under his visionary guidance, David in the University of Calabar and I at the University of Uyo were molded into living embodiments of his brilliance, ideals, and uncommon scholarship. Indeed, while I served as a graduate assistant and later assistant lecturer to Professor Okone Deduya in the University of Uyo, David Imbua served as both graduate assistant and assistant lecturer to Ambassador Professor Okone Deduya in the University of Calabar. And that is how our paths crossed, and we've been there till date. It's a very deep honor for me to have the permission of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Pastor Dr. Moabasieno, to give me the first permission of its kind ever since I assumed office, to step out from the confines of the state and make this as my own contribution to this honor for a friendship well deserved. Time and again, life has confirmed the depth of this mentorship and connection. David, after leaving the university in 2019 on leave of absence to serve as assembly, returned to be immediately promoted to professor and head of department. While I, having left my own department as head of department to serve as Commissioner for Education in Akwa Ibom State, was soon announced Professor of Military History, with my papers already in motion before my departure. Such remarkable, almost providential sequence testify not only to our dedication, but also to the enduring influence of a mentor whose vision continues to shine through us, and that is Ambassador Professor Okone Deduya. May God bless his soul. From Calabar to Uyo, from classrooms to the political landscape, our journeys have intertwined in ways that feel almost divine, proof that when greatness is nurtured, it multiplies. And it is from this refilled space of mentorship, excellence, and shared destiny that I have the profound honor and immeasurable joy to introduce a friend whose life has been a testament to intellect, integrity, mentorship, and inspiration. A scholar whose brilliance has illuminated halls of learning, inspired classrooms, and touched the hearts of all those who know him. Born in Bendi, a community nestled in the gentle embrace of lush valleys and cradled for the symmetric walls of rolling hills that grace the scenic landscape surrounding Nigeria's foremost tourist haven, the renowned Obudu Cattle Ranch in Oban Liku local government area of Cross River State. A family of Mr. Bernard Imbua and Mr. Lucy Imbua, David's journey began in modest surroundings, in that enchanting cradle of nature, with a mind already destined for greatness. From RCM Primary School in Begiaba to Bendi Technical College, where he graduated in 1995 with an excellent WAEC result. His brilliance shone unmistakably. So outstanding was his performance that the principal retained him as an auxiliary teacher even before he advanced to any tertiary institution. A testament to his exceptional intellect. In this role, the young David inspired his students deeply, leaving an impression that endures in their heart to this day. In 1998, he entered the University of Calabar to study history and international studies, where he carved his legend. He graduated as the all-round best student of the 2001-2002 session, sweeping every prize from department to university, leaving many people in awe. So profound was his distinction that the then Vice Chancellor, Professor Ivara Isu, here present, offered him automatic employment as a graduate assistant. Please, a round of applause to Professor Ivara Isu. This was an extraordinary act of recognition for an extraordinary mind. Even during his national youth service in Maiduguri, Borno State, David's brilliance and literary artistry radiated with remarkable distinction. He emerged the best writer for the 2003-2004 service year, earning the prestigious Nigerian Breweries/NYC Prize, a clear testament that greatness had chosen him early and that indeed a goldfish had no hiding place. David Imbua's rise to the graduate program was nothing short of historic. Between April 2005 and January 2009, he distinguished himself by earning both his master's and PhD in less than 4 years. An astonishing accomplishment achieved under immense academic and personal pressures. This remarkable feat earned him wide admiration as a scholar of exceptional intellect, discipline, and resilience. A prolific author with over 100 publications to his credit, including books, historical fiction, book chapters, and peer-reviewed journal articles, Professor Imbua has carved an indelible niche in African and Atlantic history as well as diaspora studies. His seminal work, Intercourse and Cross-Current in the Atlantic World, Calabar British Experience, 17th to 20th Centuries, have won both national and international prizes and commendations, cementing his reputation as a historian of uncommon depth and originality. His ongoing project, the notorious massacre at Calabar in 1767, in collaboration with the globally renowned scholars such as Paul E. Lovejoy, Nicholas Radbourne, and Randy J. Sparks, will expand and reshape scholarly understanding of Calabar's place in the Atlantic slave trade. Interestingly, this landmark study attracted a prestigious research grant from Tulane University, New Orleans, in recognition of his scholarly significance. Now at an advanced stage of production and already announced outline, the book is expected to be released to the reading of public before the end of the year, promising to make a major contribution to historical scholarship. Always at the vanguard of historical inquiry, Professor David Imbua's work have consistently challenged and refined long-held assumptions, reaffirming his stature as one of the most dynamic and revisionist voices in contemporary African historiography. Professor David Imbua is truly a global citizen of knowledge, whose intellectual footprints span continents and cultures. He has graced conferences, workshops, and symposia across Africa, Europe, and the Americas. From South Africa to Senegal, Canada to the United States, the United Kingdom to Mali, Cameroon to Germany, Ghana to Switzerland, Tanzania to Sierra Leone, and beyond. Illuminating every platform with the brilliance of his scholarship. Within Nigeria, he has been engaged in one form of academic activity or the other in nearly every state, earning him a reputation as one of the nation's most visible and versatile historians. A contributor to UNESCO's General History of Africa, a project reserved for historians of the highest caliber, Professor Imbua's inclusion at a relatively young age is both inspiring and profoundly commendable, marking him among a select league of scholars shaping the continent's intellectual heritage. The General History of Africa is published in over 50 languages, yet even beyond this global platform, some of Imbua's personal works have been translated into French, extending its influence well beyond the Anglophone world. He's an active member of several prestigious professional associations, including the Pan-African Association, the African Studies Association of the United Kingdom, and the Historical Society of Nigeria, where he serves as on the council as Vice President, South-South, and was acting president of the society from October 4 to April 2025. Through these platforms, Professor Imbua continues to affirm his place as a distinguished scholar whose reach and relevance transcend borders. But his impact is not confined to the ivory tower. Professor Imbua is a mentor, guide, and nurturer of talent, having supervised 9 PhD theses, 15 master's dissertations, 5 PhDs, and over 200 undergraduates, many of whom now carry the torch of scholarship and service. Please, I would like those who have been supervised by Professor Imbua, taught by him, to please rise at this point too and take a bow. Chairman, sir, that is the outlook of the product of the hard work of the 151st Inaugural Lecturer. His administrative genius is currently reflected in his service as head of department and vice president, South-South Zone of the Historical Society of Nigeria, among others. At home, he is blessed with a life partner of unmatched grace, Honorable Mrs. Juliet Dave Imbua, a woman whose love, wisdom, and unwavering support have been the foundation of his personal and professional life. Together, they have raised a family steeped in love, discipline, and service. Madam Vice Chancellor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, David Imbua is more than a historian. He's a colossus of intellect, a beacon of integrity, and a living testament to human potential. He is a man whose pen has reshaped history, whose mind has enlightened generations, and whose heart has served humanity. It is therefore my highest honor to present to you a scholar whose work commands respect, whose mentorship inspires generation, and whose life brings pride and glory to the University of Calabar and to Nigeria. With resounding admiration, veneration, and all respect, I present to you the 151st Inaugural Lecturer of the University of Calabar, Professor David Lishilinimle Imbua. Thank you very much.
Have you fixed? distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Vice Chancellor and Chairman of this occasion, Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research, Linkages and Collaborations, members of the University of Calabar Governing Council, the Registrar, Registrar and Secretary to Council, University Librarian, the Bursar, the Chairman Committee of Deans, Deans of Faculties, Directors of Institutes. Special recognition to my Chairman, to my Dean, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, the Provost, College of Medical Sciences, the Provost, Postgraduate College, distinguished professors and members of Senate, heads of department, members of convocation and congregation, my Lord Spiritual and Temporal, eminent scholars and colleagues from other universities, my lovely wife and dear children, distinguished family members here present, distinguished invited guests, gentlemen of the press, Malabites and Malabreses, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Vice Chancellor, esteemed colleagues, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to present the 151st Inaugural Lecture of the University of Calabar, titled Calabar in the Atlantic Mirror, Myths, Misconceptions, and Realities. Before proceeding to the main discourse, permit me to briefly spotlight the Department of History and International Studies, which the Vice Chancellor has graciously entrusted to my leadership at this time. In doing this, I will briefly highlight the milestones of the department. I'm deeply honored to deliver the 4th inaugural lecture from the Department of History and International Studies, which, like our university, marked its Golden Jubilee this year. At the founding of the University of Calabar, were two towering historians. I'm sure we are all familiar with these names, Professor Emmanuel Ayandele, the Vice Chancellor, and Professor Konede Uya, the pioneer Deputy Vice Chancellor. So we can say with all justification that at the beginning of the University of Calabar, we are historians and they make history. The department launched the first loudest interdisciplinary platform which emphasized the cooperation and unity that existed among disciplines, emphasizing the connections between the sciences, humanities, and social sciences. This happened at a time where scholars were still restricted to their interdisciplinary boundaries. That product led to the publication of a very important book, The Expanding Frontiers of African History, the Interdisciplinary, very influential and influencing scholarship around the world. It is also important to point out at this time that the Department of History, University of Calabar, was the first to start the publication of a journal. The Calabar Historical Journal started in 1977, just 2 years after the university was established. In that same vein, the university also, the Department of History was also the first to begin postgraduate studies in 1977, producing the first set of PhD holders in 1982. The department has continued to lead in the number of PhD production, second only to the University of Ibadan. Even at the undergraduate level, the landmark of the department have been distinguished. James Abo was elected SUG president in 1987. David Imbua emerged the all-round-based graduating student in 2001-2002 section, and Roland Takon also emerged the all-round-based graduating student in 2022-2023. Margaret Onen was the first SUG scribe of parliament and also vice president. All these are to show that the Department of History is living and have made its contribution to what the University of Calabar began. The department has also been represented in the Governing Council of the University of Calabar. We have Professor Kon Edetuya, who was member of the first and the department is going through a crisis period at this time. This crisis has to do with its structural and epistemology, challenges that are threatening the heritage and vitality of the department. If these challenges are not addressed, the history department will likely become a pale shadow of itself. Because of lack of time, you can read the book in your hand. Everything has been explained there, but permit me to just restrict myself here to only two main concerns. One is the state of postgraduate research, and the second is the evaluation of books in promotion criteria. History is empirical, history is analytic, and history is inductive. It begins with evidence, not borrowed theories demanding affirmation. It is therefore wrong to impose theoretical framework on the postgraduate students in history. Many of those theories that are introduced do not affect the analysis in any way. Let me tell you how that works. I had completed my PhD work in 2009, successfully defended it, submitted it to graduate school. It was when it got to graduate school vetting committee that they insisted that the work cannot go through without the inclusion of a theory. All I did was to look at the internet and just pick a theory which I don't ever remember what it is. And because it was included, the graduate school passed that work expeditiously. I can tell you as an active member of that department that many of the theories you see in theses originated from history department have nothing to do with the work. And that is why we don't even teach theories in history. So if you don't teach a student about theory at the first degree, at the master's level, how do you think the student will know what you are talking about theories at the postgraduate studies? So this straitjacket is not good for historical scholarship. It is rather important that we leave every discipline to do what is best for them. One other issue of concern, as it concerns the postgraduate thesis, is the idea of recommendation. History is purely a subject of analysis. And we know that every historical subject is unique in its own way. So historians don't recommend anything. History is different from advocacy. So those policies where you do indication of recommendations they are not historical studies. I can bet you to it that you cannot see any work written by any serious historian and you find recommendations in that work. Historians don't recommend. And so when the postgraduate school insists that every thesis must have recommendations, it is not helping the discipline of history. Let me also talk about the devaluation of book briefly. In the University of Calabar, books are not accepted for promotion until one attains the status of senior lecturer. It is not supposed to be, because history is a book-based discipline. Many of the most important books that we read in history were written by scholars who have not attained the status of senior lecturer. Those are the books that define them. Maybe I give you a few examples. Professor J.F. Adeajayi published his Christian missions in Nigeria in 1965. Professor Emmanuel Ayandele, the pioneer vice chancellor of this university, published his The Missionary Factor on Modern Nigeria in 1966. My mentor of Brace's memory, Professor Kone Oya, published his From Slavery to Public Service in 1971. Professor Adele Afigbo published his classic, The Warren Chief, Indirect Rule in Southern Nigeria, in 1972. That was the same year that Walter Ronne published his epoch-making book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, in that same year. If we move closer to us here, Professor Stellato published A Federation of the Biase in 1991. The distinguished Professor Sandy Ono published his The Ejagam Nation, the crossover region of Nigeria, in 1994. And Donald Omagu produced History of Bakwara People in 1997. None of these scholars has attained the status of senior lecturer. And these are the books for which they are known. History is empirical, history is analytic, and has nothing to do with the position. I should also state with every humility that my Intercourse and Cross Current was published in 2012. The same year I published Slavery, Slave Trade, and the African Diaspora. And those books are widely published, have attracted recommendation and prizes before I became senior lecturer in 2015. Not many people will know the books I have published from 2015. What is the point I'm making? The point I'm making is that the university should subject books to critical analysis and review, not because they are written by senior lecturers. Like insiders to us, we know many of the books that our colleagues write as senior lecturers are with the help of graduate assistant lecturer who cannot publish those books on their own right because they are not senior lecturers. I should also tell us that when I joined the services of the University of Calabar as a very young scholar, graduate assistant, and assistant lecturer, I wrote books, wrote articles, and because of the policy of the university, I will include the names of my senior colleagues as lead authors and put myself as second author because I wasn't a senior member of staff. It's not supposed to be so. We need to release history from this bondage because for us historians, books is where we find our trade. That is, the unfortunate thing is that we have historians in the university today who have no book in their honor. You cannot associate a professor of history with any book. It's not supposed to be so. Having said that, let me move to the subject of the discussion today. Calabar in the Atlantic War, setting the stage. My journey into Atlantic history did not begin in lecture rooms or archives. It begins in the streets of Calabar itself. Streets like Cold Water Training Institution, Ejele Memorial Girls Secondary School, Mary Celeste Avenue, Golden Street, Beecroft Street. We have Oduaya Street, we have Becker Davis, Duncan Street, among other people. Many of us know these streets, but we have never stopped to ponder what these names are. So what I began to do is that, who were these people? If you live in Oduaya Street, for example, who was Oduaya? If you drive through Atamonu, for instance, who was Atamonu? What brought them here? Clearly they are not from here, but what brought them here? Why are they immortalized in this city? What lessons endure? What lessons can we learn from this? So this was what led me into pursuing the archives. And I discovered that Calabar history from about the 17th century is connected to the Atlantic Ocean. But beyond that, as I dive into the primary records, it became clear to me that many of the things accepted and circulated as historical facts are in reality nothing but factual. So this lecture is not merely about the Atlantic Ocean or Calabar's interaction with the Atlantic world. It is about the myths, it's about the misconceptions, and it is about the realities. As a revisionist historian, I seek not to discard earlier works, but to question inherited narratives, text assumptions against the evidence, and offer fresh perspective. In doing so, if we gaze into the Atlantic mirror, if you look to your left, you'll see a very mighty mirror standing there. And if you look into it, as far as this discussion is concerned, you will see the ubiquitous presence of the ethic. Even though Calabar is made up of so many groups, it was the ethic that played a very important role in the slave trade, in the religious encounter, colonial enterprise, and all the activities that were brought into here by the Atlantic. It was the ethic that piloted them. So when you look here, you see the sea, you see the people being carried on that sea, you can see the shrub by the side of it, human beings being carried away. All these affected the politics, the society of this area. So the ethic were uplifted by the sea. Scholars have continued to wonder why the ethic are a small population compared to, for instance, the Ibibio compared to to the Igbos, to many other people in southern Nigeria, the Efik is a small number. So people wonder why they became the political and economic center of gravity in southeastern Nigeria. And I'm telling us today that it was the sea. It was the sea that gave prominence to the Efik. The Efik city-states, including Creektown, Duketown, Old Town, the Achibon Town, Kobon, Henshaw, and the Iyamba Town, were all strategically located by the river. And that was what gave them advantage. Like we still find in our days today. At that time, there was no Efik man or the European that can dispute who were the original inhabitants of this city. But because they have gained so much power, so much money, so much influence, over time, as we are going to see, they began to challenge other people and say they are the original owners, they are the original inhabitants. And because of their influence, over time, that debate is still with us today. It was the Atlantic. If we remove the Atlantic Ocean, we remove the slave trade, the missionary enterprise, the colonial rule, nothing will be left of Efik history. By the late 19th century, Calabar became the cradle of Western civilization in southern Nigeria, ending the title the granddaughter of the Atlantic. So every wave of change, economic, religious, or cultural, that arrived Calabar by the sea, and it was through the Efik agency that these waves were radiated, were refined, were passed into the interior, and they dictated how it should be. So it was the sea that gave Efik their power, economically, religiously, socially, and otherwise. You cannot take away the Efik and the river. So the river gave them their fame and everything. And it started with the Atlantic slave trade. Calabar exported between 3,000 to 5,000 enslaved people annually, and in the process ranked as 5th in slave export after Luanda, Bengola, Bonny, and Uda. British ships from Bristol, from Liverpool, London carried captives from here to the Americas. As Britain prospered, that was the Efik city-state also prospered. Efik prosperity was built largely on the enslavement of their hinterland neighbors, the Igbos, the Ibibio, the Ijagam, stretching all the way to Benue Valley and beyond present-day Cross River State, beyond present-day southeastern Nigeria, and they were so influential. That is why there are some recent calls today that the Efik should pay reparation to some of their interior districts. Over there, you see the number of slaves that were imported from here. I brought a scholar here in 2012 who is working on this subject of reparation. And her argument, her thesis is that it is not enough, it is no longer fashionable for us to say the Europeans should pay reparation to Africa. Within Africa also, societies should be defined based on the role they play in the Atlantic slave trade. And in Nigeria, we find the Efik being listed among those who should pay reparation to the interior district. And so when she came here to interview, to conduct some interviews here, and I took her to interview the late elder Okponye, and Okponye almost drive her out of his house to say that he has never heard this since he was born, that somebody is telling an African community to pay reparation to interior district. And she insisted that new things you hear every day. And this project is still being pursued. Whether they will pay or not is not the subject for discussion today. What I want to do as a historian is to lead you through the analysis and allow you to take your decision. So the Efik were shrewd, were ambitious, they control everything. By 1720, when the Glasgow slaver, Alexander Husband, paid loyalties to slave traders and people in Efik, out of the 22 he paid, only one was a known Efik. And the one that was a Nook Efik was the king of the Quor, who received 35 copper brass rod, not as a slave trader, but in acknowledgement of the Quor status as the original inhabitants and landlord of the city. a position both the Efik and the Europeans recognized as a part and never contested. We look at this map here. Yeah, you see the areas from where the Efik got slaves to sell to the Europeans. Another important point to stress is that the Efik did not enslave their own king and kings. Their kinsmen were not enslaved. It was a taboo to enslave an Efik person. And if you attempted to enslave an Efik, people were killed for it. In 1774, we find a situation where some captains of ships were killed here. There was also the incident of 1767 massacre, which came as a result of competition between Old Town and New Town over who should control the slave trade. It was just in situations like that where you find crises among the Efik themselves that can lead to the enslavement of Efik persons. Even when that happened, such people were pursued and were returned to their families. If you read through the primary record, you find several letters that were written from Efik monarchs to their counterpart in Britain, complaining of free people that were taken to the Americas. Some of those people were returned, including the Robin Johns that unfortunately returned and rejoined the slave business here. One would have thought that people who have gone through the Caribbean, got through Britain, the church helped them to come back to their community, they will begin to preach against enslavement. But that was not so. They came back and became slave traders. We ask ourselves if that has changed. Just answer that by yourself, if that has changed. The leaders we have, people around us. And I should also point out that the Efik were not just slave sellers. The Efik were kidnappers, they were riders of slaves. In the testimonies that were given before the British Parliament in the build-up to the abolition of the slave trade, people testified. The record of Thomas Clarkson, he listed Efik people who went on kidnapping, on slavery in the night, capturing men, women, and children. Isaac Parker left us with the whole document because he resided with the king of Old Town. The number of times he went on slave raid with him and the people that they were brought. Where were those slave raids taken from? Present communities in Akwa Ibom State, in Ogoja, in Igbo, beyond up to the Benue River. Efik captured people from all these places and sell as slaves. One of the most important contributions I have made to the study of slave trade and slavery in the crossover region is that we should typologize societies. We should group these societies according to the role that they play for a better understanding of it. So my argument is that we have slave-riding societies and we have slave-ridden societies. And whatever monument we are keeping in commemoration of the slave trade, this should be reflected in it. That is my quarrel with the Calabar Slave History Museum. The Calabar Slave History Museum have just tried to externalize this blame of slave trade and slavery. So when you walk through it, they tell the Europeans capture people, the European did this, the European did that, and that ends it. That is a one-sided story, and it's a very dangerous story. If we continue to write history in that way, ladies and gentlemen, we will never learn the appropriate lessons from history. Let us look ourselves in the face and tell ourselves that they were local agents, local merchants who enabled the slave trade. Without them, slave trade would not have happened here. Local merchants like Ebo, Yamba, who resisted the abolition of the slave trade. We should have their pictures there. What is the European slavers doing in Calabar Slave History Museum? What will you find in a European Slave History Museum, in the American Slave History Museum? So I'm saying that if the proper advice was sought for, it should have been the Calabar sector of the slave trade that should have been reproduced there. So it is so. Apart from that, the Efik, while they capture people from other places, they send their children for education in Britain. Archibald told us from 1767 that there was never a time that they were not Efik children in British schools. They were educated. That gave them early start advantage. They became retreats. They wrote books. The most important surviving document written by an African on the slave trade is by an Efik person, the Antaradok. His diary has been published in various languages. So we still find that today, ladies and gentlemen, people who are not funding public schools, people who know that public schools are in a very bad shape, they are not concerned because they send their children abroad. Their children are schooling in Europe, they are schooling in America, so they are not concerned about what is happening. This is how history should be linked in this analysis. So they were not bothered about what was happening to other societies. The division today is no longer among ethnic groups. We find it in classes. So it is something the historian need to emphasize. We also find the architectural design change. If you walk through this city, these magnificent buildings that we have were brought here during the slave trade. They were paid for in slaves. They were slave traders that brought them for their African agents and merchants, paid for other people. They slept comfortable in those houses where they knew that other people were sold. People died on the Middle Passage. People died on Atlantic Ocean. Families were separated for their own comfort. There may be no slave trade today. We may not be carrying people across the Atlantic Ocean, but this parallel is still running among us. You find people that cannot eat, people that have no place to put their head. Hospitals are not working, but one man wants to amass wealth, which he will not even spend in his generation. To amass wealth, which his children will have no use for. Money that will just be a complete waste. So we ask ourselves, these houses, which thousands of people were given out in exchange for, who is still living in them? Where are those houses today? Some of them were burned, some of them are in decay. But what they did to humanity is still being remembered today. We still find other houses here. This is the house of King Eyo. King Eyo, honestly, the second, very important slave trader, also an abolitionist and a modernizer. King Eyo, honestly, truly understood the dynamics of Atlantic history. So he played rules from slave trading to the very end when the missionaries came. This is his house. What has just been done to it that is new is the roof that has been changed. We also look briefly at Ekpe society. Historians will know that Ekpe society originated among the Ijagam, and it was known as Ingbe. It played political, social, religious functions. When the Efik adopted it from the Ijagam people, they make it strongly an economic institution. The Europeans bought membership into it. So membership into Ekpe society became another big source of revenue to the Efik. So some historians have argued that it was as a result of slave trade that Ekpe was developed, but it is not so. If we do that, we trivialize the significance of one of Africa's most important indigenous institutions. Politics of slave trade abolition. The abolition of slave trade was a highly contested subject. The Efik resisted the abolition of the slave trade. You know why they will resist it. Efik rulers and merchants whose wealth and authority were deeply tied to the Atlantic economy fiercely opposed British effort to abolish the slave trade. You see, at the point that Britain was talking about abolishing the slave trade, figures as Eyonesty 2 of Creektown, Kinayamba 5 of Duketown were resisting it and selling slaves to other European countries. The argument was that Calabar is not a British colony. Of course, we know that during the time of the slave trade, no African society had been colonized officially. And so if Britain abolished the slave trade, the argument was that the Efik were free to continue to sell slaves to other nations. Of course, the Portuguese were there, the French were there, the Dutch were there to buy slaves. So you see arrivals from Calabar from 1806 to 1840. So you look at this table, It will give you a clear understanding. This is the period after British abolition of the Atlantic slave trade. And you can see the number of persons that were still taken from this region, both to various places in the Americas. So they opposed the abolition of the slave trade. They defended it very strongly. So the lesson is clear. Efik kings did not champion the abolition of the slave trade. They resisted it. But like I have told us, they also understood the politics, the international politics. It's something we must give it to the Efik of the mid-19th century. They had clear understanding of what was happening in the larger Atlantic world. And so they have to negotiate the abolition of the slave trade in their own terms. Despite all the effort with the British to use the military to stop the slave trade, it did not work until 1842, when Britain has to negotiate with the Efik. They have to pay their kings, the two prominent kings, King Eyo Honesty and King Eyamba the Fifth, each received 2,000 Spanish dollars annually for 5 years. This amount to 416 pounds, the things they ordered for 5 consecutive years. It was only after they have received the compensation that the Efik endorsed the abolition of the slave trade. Let me tell us that a few years later, the Efik will regret signing the abolition treaty with the British. And when they heard that the slave trade was going to be resumed, they celebrated it. They were just deceived that the British were bringing a new program known as the Free Immigration Program. Slaves will be hired from their masters in Africa, taken to the Americas to work for 7 years, and they will be returned to their masters in Africa. Eyo Honesty, King Eyamba the Fifth, they were ready to resume the slave trade, but they told the white man clearly that we are not renting slaves for 7 years. You are buying them for life. And King Eyo told the white man, water no be land. Do you know the meaning of that? If it were land and people get to the Americas after 7 years, they can trek back to their masters. But it is on the high sea, Atlantic Ocean. How will they walk through the Atlantic Ocean to come back? And Eyo believed that no white man will return slaves after 7 years. So they were ready to resume slave trade, but they will only do so as complete sale of those slaves. That, like I have said, never happened. It was a concussion. What will happen next? Lead us to what I titled the Macedonian Call and the coming of the pioneer missionaries. When the Efik realized that Atlantic slave trade had been abolished, Eyo Honesty will always say that what has blessed them is the white man. The white man is educated. The white man is enterprising. They have gone to school. That their own children roam about like goats. They don't know anything until they begin to pick a few things. And the slave trader said, don't worry, a new set of Europeans will take over from where we have stopped. And this new set of Europeans were the missionaries. So the Efik look up with so much expectation. They wrote letters you can read. In fact, I've reproduced a few of them in that book. You will look at them. Letters they wrote to the British government asking for missionaries. When they were asking for missionaries, they were clear about it. They were not asking for people that will come and preach the gospel. They were not asking for people that will bring Bible and teach them. Howard had dramatized it in his book, 29 Years. Howard tells us that when King Eyo Honesty received the Bible, which he donated to him, that he put it to his chest and said, with this book, I know that God will bless and prosper me. Why would he say that? He thought it was what the Efik referred to as trade book. He didn't know it was God book. The same day, he gave the same book to King Eyamba, who echoed almost the same sentiment. King Eyamba also said the same thing, that this book will bless him. In the letter they wrote, King Eyo Honesty was clear. King Eyo Honesty wrote that this letter dated 1st of December 1842. Say, I have too much man now. I can't sell slaves and don't know what to do for them. But if I can get some cotton some coffee to grow, and man to teach men and make sugar cane for our country, I'll be very glad. That was what he said. Listen to what Kineyamba said 3 days later. He echoed the same thing and said, now we can't sell slaves again. We have too much man for country and want something for make work and trade. And if we could get seed for cotton and coffee, we could make trade. Plenty sugarcane live here. Sugarcane that was growing here. But what they needed was large-scale production of these items. So in their own understanding, the missionaries were technologists, missionaries were agriculturists, people who will come and teach them how to produce cotton, coffee, and sugar. These were commodities that were produced in the Americas with slave labor. So the Efik understood it and knew that if they could establish this here, they will also become economically strong and viable. We know that the British government will not even want to raise competitors in Africa. So what they were bringing to them were not technologies, they were not planters. And this will also bring a very big problem when the missionaries will finally arrive. Kineyamba boasted to them the land that he has, that his land, you can walk through it for several days and you will never get to the end of it. It was politics. Doktan did not have that kind of land. Eyo was only trying to convince them that I have land that you can establish plantations of cotton, plantations of sugar, plantations of coffee. But what the missionaries needed was a small piece of land to build church and to build school. So you see Hope there when he arrived. So Hope went with King People to Bonin, with the king to Bonin. And King People of Bonin asked Dr. King, who is a missionary? Because King had introduced Hopewell and his team to him as these are missionaries working in the crossover region. So he asked him, who is a missionary? And the reply he got was that a missionary is a juju man. What am I saying? Africans asking for Europeans. They didn't know whom they were asking for. It was misconception. Young people always write it. They say, they used to put some pictures on Facebook, say, what I ordered, what I got. So they order for agriculturists, they order for industrialists, they order for rich people. But they got people who were poor economically, rich spiritually. They didn't want spiritual riches. They established school thinking their children will go to school, begin to navigate the Atlantic Ocean, and also become big business and industrialists. But when they got to school, it was God book they were teaching. People abandoned school. Efik children left. Say, if it is God book, they won't go to school. And Hopewell went and met King Honesty II to complain why children were withdrawn from school. And he told him, King Honesty told him, that every man knows that God lives and he created the heavens and earth. So if it is to teach this, there is no need for our children to come to school. The son of Jack, who was one of those who invited a missionary. I thought I put it here, but it's well stated in the book when you open it. He had this encounter with Hopewell when he told Hopewell that he was no longer going back to school because what he needs is trade book. And Hopewell told him, what will you gain if you get all the trade book and you lost your soul? So let him gain trade book first. And Hopewell regretted that it was just a few years after that a poor boy died and left this earth. Has our education changed? Are we getting, if we borrow the ways of Efik monarchs of the mid-19th century, are we getting trade book? Are we teaching industrial education? Are we teaching God book? We criticize the Europeans, that the education they gave to us was inferior, the education was this, that. Even in how many years after independence, if we use Nigeria for example, can we truly tell ourselves that we are given the right kind of education that should be given in the 21st century? The classroom that we teach students, the laboratories that we use, the books that we use in teaching, can we tell ourselves that this is what they deserve in the 21st century? We are teaching God book and not even doing what that God book says. But that was not all. The missionaries accomplished some aim. They translated the Bible into Efik, making Efik the first Nigerian language to hold complete scripture by 1866. Efik became the lingua franca of the Cross River region, people speaking it up to the Cameroons, to Upper Cross River, everywhere. It was because of the presence of the Europeans. The missionaries also elevated the status of Ekpe because Ekpe helped them in what they were doing. So they produced indigenous clergies who helped in propagating the gospel in the hinterland district. So many interior districts, citizens of interior district who have never seen a white man in their life was impacted by whatever agreement was reached between the Efik and the Europeans in the coast. This is, yes, Reverend Esin Okpabio was the first Efik priest. The next slide is his son, Reverend William Esin Okpabio, who also became a priest. The missionaries challenged the practice that they deem as barbaric, like the human sacrifice, twin killing, oppression, all sorts of things. They challenged them and asked the people to live lives that are in consonance with civilization and Christianity. That led us to discussing from custom to conscience, some turning points in the moral history. The missionary era sparked a profound reawakening and stemming grief. In pre-missionary Calabar, death was a spectacle. The passing of a prominent person demanded loud, violent wailing. Silence or restrained mourning was unthinkable. In fact, Hope Waddell told us that the very week he arrived, by 4 a.m., he heard a very loud cry. And people were wailing and crying as if there was death in every family, in every compound. Though they said that was their tradition, that from 5 a.m. people must cry non-stop till noonday. And they said it wasn't necessary. That is not how to grieve for the dead. And that when Jameson died in 1846, the old water just kissed him in his forehead and God whispered to him, "Farewell, brother, we shall meet again." To the Efik, this was shocking, was offensive. They were surprised that such a man who has spent his life would just be mourned in that way. So the missionaries were able to convince them, and mourning became personal, moral, deeply reflective. So grief was no longer a performance dictated by custom. So this change in mourning paved the way for broader reforms, the curbing of extravagant funerals, the easing of social burdens, and the gradual reshaping of the Calabar conscience. They also combated extravagant funerals. When a Yamba died, his house, this Yamba massive house that was brought by slavers to him, is supposed to be a very important monument of Nigeria. But it was burnt down when he died, because they say a Yamba cannot appear before his ancestors without a house. It was that same belief also that was responsible for the burying of people with the dead. Say, if you appear before your ancestors empty-handed, they will feel you were a slave in this part of the world. So you must be buried with slaves, you will be buried with goods, so that they know you were a great man while you live. So a man can be buried with up to 200 people. He was a great man. So if you die without a slave, you were a poor man. So you find a situation where even if you had no slaves on your own, your friends can donate slaves to you to bury with any of your dead persons, so that the person appears on the other side of the world as an important person. Missionaries preach against this and call for moderation. Why will you spend so much for the dead and not for the living? That it was nonsensical, it was foolishness. that you don't take care of a man while he lives, but you are able to spend for him when he no longer needs it. So they couldn't understand it. But many people began to understand the argument. Again, King Honesty was one of them who bought into it and clearly told his people this was very foolish. King Honesty had a friend, Atem Ared. And Atem Ared said this. Let me quote it. He said, "We be fool, big fool. When I live, my friends give me nothing. Suppose I beg them. When I die, then they come, give me everything. When I don't need it again, and put for ground with me. It be fool fashion. We all be big fool." So we all be big fool. And many people bought into that, and with time, burial became simple, not giving stress to anybody, and it has continued. You are back to it. You have answered the question before it even comes to you. That's the next thing I was going to ask us. Whether we have continued that tradition. But I agree with you. Unfortunately, this is not what we do in our time. We find some churches who say you don't need to keep corpses in the mortuary for too long before they are buried. Whether you have money or not, bury the dead. What have some people do? They conceal the deaths of their loved ones from the church leadership. So if somebody died, the person can be in mortuary for 5 months, 8 months. It is only when you are ready for the burial that you inform the church that you have lost somebody. In order, what would they do? They will be raising funds, billing themselves. People who cannot pay school fees, they are looking for money so that they will bury others. The kind of cooperation we find during burial, we don't find it in non-funeral situations. People come together to raise money. Your friend is sick, critically sick. You will not travel to go and see him. Even when he asks for money, you will not give him. But when you hear he died, you will call the wife. They have been calling you, you are not picking up. But when he died, you have all the time to pick. And when he's going to be buried, you are going to pay the last respect. You will shave every appointment that you have, spend so much money, you will buy car. The man that had no fish to eat, they will kill cows. The man that has no decent house to live, they will now furnish the house, reconstruct the compound, do everything. What are they doing? They are celebrating the dead over and above the living. And a honesty say, very foolish culture. And I read Atem, concur with him, and said it be foolish fashion. And so we are big fool. How can you spend so much to treat to put somebody on the ground when he doesn't need it? But you will not want to keep it. People you don't greet when they are living. When they die, you will travel and go and write beautiful condolence, beautiful tributes, and read how the person was. But you never told the person why he was living. It's very foolish fashion. So I've always make that point, that the things Efik knew in the mid-19th century, we don't know them. All this idea of going to consult shrines, all that, they bound them. But we are back to them several years after. So because of that, missionary preached on the 6th commandment, thou shalt not kill. It changed the people. And when Efik people accepted these things, they began to preach it to the interior district. Before we even get to that, by January 1856, Old Town was bombarded. It was burned down completely because it still buried the living with the dead. So the Europeans had made it clear to them that they were no longer going to tolerate it. And when Old Town was going to be rebuilt, they have to sign a treaty, sign agreement, to say that they will abolish human sacrifice, they will stop the killing of twins, and Esarabin or Odie will no longer be practiced. So by the Hopkins Treaty of 1878, they have made burying the living with the dead or the killing of twins, all those bloodshed activities had become capital offenses. So the missionary provided ethnic leaders land authority, and they became the missionaries to the interior districts. So I should say this, when the ethnic got to Ebunda, a community in the hinterland, and argued strongly that they don't need to kill people to bury with the dead, and that if they continue to do that, they were going to blow Ekpe on them. Ebunda sent a delegation to Your Honesty to plead that they have old people in their midst. They should give them time to bury their old men in the old tradition before they move to the new tradition. And Your Honesty said if they wanted to be buried in the old tradition, they would have died before the change came. Then Ared, who was just like a drunkard, like a non-entity, co-workers say he made a very profound statement. Ared told the Ebunda people, okay, you have 2 days. Go back to your community, kill all your old men and bury them in the old tradition. After 2 days, Ekpe will be blown on your community. And they asked, how can we go and kill our fathers and mothers? So they say, oh, you don't want to kill your father and mother, but you want to kill other people's fathers and mothers. So the law took place. And the rulers of Ebunda that came said, this Your Honesty and his men, you have collected bribe from the Europeans. That is why you are doing this. And if we must stop, you will also give us a share of that bribe. And Your Honesty told them, yes, white man has given us bribe. That bribe is the Bible and missionaries. You can have them as much as you want. What did he say? He went on to say, those in Calabar, if you want, we'll give them to you. And the people went back in that sorrowful state. That was, what am I saying? The missionaries played a part in taming some of these inhuman practices that they made. Quickly, I move to beyond Mary Celeste, separating missionary myth from historical reality. With all humility, I should say that I was the first that began the research to say that Mary Celeste was not the person that abolished the killing of twins. Everybody that has written on this subject has made reference to me. And when that article was written in 2012, given to my late boss and mentor, Professor Kone de Uya, to read it, Professor Oya asked me, how did you come by all these facts? That the facts are overwhelming. That he was going to organize a press conference to discuss this. I sent it to Professor Paul Lovejoy, who is with us online, to read for me. Professor Paul Lovejoy, the next email I got from him is that the paper has been published without any edit in his corpus-based journal, to tell us how significant this was. My very good friend and fellow mentee of Okonoya, Professor Obomo, the Honorable Commissioner for Education in Akwa Ibom State, they were doing a book project. He had sent me a chapter to write on Mary Celeste. All I did was to share my article with him. I didn't hear from Obon again. It was when we were attending a program in Abuja, and they were talking about primary research and this. It was there I heard Obon got up and said, when the evidence are overwhelming, the historian will surrender. That they were doing a book on Mary Celeste to celebrate this, but when he read my article, that book died a natural death. That is what historians do. That is what scholarship is. It is evidence-based. That is why historians will not follow you to the gutter. When you have no evidence and you are making noise, we are not noise makers. We put evidences on the table. And evidence lead us. I often tell my students, no authority, however eminent and profound, can withstand evidence in historical reconstruction. Professor Oya taught me he was like a god with all that he knew. If I find evidence that contradicts what he said, I will follow the evidence. So that was what I did. And I began to ask myself this question. The first set of missionaries arrived in 1846 Mary Celeste will come in 1876. That is 30 years different. So I asked myself, will these missionaries be spending 30 years here and killing of twins will be going on? Then I also discovered that Hope Water, who led the missionaries here from 1846, retired from the missionary field, went back to Britain in 1858. And when you read Hope Water's book, you read Goldie's book, those primary documents, you see the pictures of the celebrations that the EFIC were doing when they were going. And you read the parting ways of Hope Water, where he said, the people that sat in darkness have seen a great light, and he counted himself worthy that God have used him to achieve this. When he got back, you also find a litany of letters from Calabar people, thanking Hope Water for the work he has done, and that they will do everything possible so that they will meet him in heaven, where they will part no more. Are we saying that people who are determined to meet Hope Water in heaven will not know that killing of twins is a sin? And many of them said, I cannot be king unless you will allow me to rule as a Christian king. What does a Christian king connote? So these were some of the questions I asked myself and began to look at the evidences, the primary evidences more closely. I didn't bother myself much with biographies, with dramatization, with monuments, with even what is taught in school curriculum. My daughter is here, and she will always tell me, it's Mary Celeste that killed the twilling of twins. I know it's not correct, but that is the answer she must write in school to pass. So we began to look at the evidence. This is Mary Celeste, and it took us to the very important meeting that took place on the Abuona in 1850, when the missionaries mobilized people from Creektown, Old Town, all places, to go for this meeting and study and debate under the auspices of the Society for the Abolition of Inhuman and Superstitious Customs and for Promotion of Civilization. When they met on the Abuona, the only item on the agenda was the killing of twins. So the Europeans put it to them. The EFIC were asked to go and meet, consult among themselves, and bring their resolution to the missionaries. Missionaries were disappointed because it was Your Honesty is here that spoke for the EFIC, and he told them that they cannot stop the killing of twins. It will continue. Europeans were disappointed. Then Hope Water asked Your Honesty, what is your own personal view? Forget about the general, what is your view? And Your Honesty said, well, for me, twins should live. Nobody should kill twins. And then Kinachibo argued, said, if anybody stop the killing of twins, they are going to kill them. And Your Honesty said, okay, let me pass this law and see who will drive me from my land. Read that book that you have in your hands. You will find every detail of the debate, of the analysis, of how this debate, of how the twin killing was abolished. This is King Achibon of Old Town. When the missionaries got the support of the EFIC kings, King Achibon left his town, migrated to the interior to go and live away from missionary and civilizing influences. Let the Europeans continue to do whatever they are doing. He has moved to the interior. By the time he come back, Old Town was already bombarded. The heroization of Mary Celeste. Let me just summarize it. This myth that Mary Celeste stopped the killing of twins has come through three ways. One is the Women Missionary Magazine, and then which spread the story, even referring to Mary Celeste as pioneer missionary. It was when she died that this kind of things began to come up, that she was a pioneer missionary, 40 years of pioneer missionary, Mary Celeste of Calabar, Mary Celeste, the heroine of empire. Nobody said this when she lived. And then biographies that were commissioned to be written on it. Whatever achievement that was made by the pioneer missionary was attributed to Mary Celeste because she was also seen as a pioneer missionary, but she was not. twin killing had been stopped before Mary Celeste arrived. Golding's wife, who was barren, the longest serving missionary in Calabar, who was barren, she saved so many twins, which she lived with, trained them. And when she died, the Efik people say Dorcas had died. Why did they call him Dorcas? Because she had done so much for them. So you have a long list. If you open the book, you have a long list of European missionaries who saved twins before Mary Celeste's arrival. And let me also quickly tell us that one thing historians have done, or one thing commentators have done, is to paint a picture that suggests that every community was killing twins. It was not so. Killing of twins was an Efik tradition. So when you move from Efik territory, the people never killed twins. You read Hopewater, you read Goldie, you read Talbot, all those things. They told us how twins were celebrated among the Ichagam people. And they said the Ichagam celebrated twins without stop. They danced all through the night, brought gifts to the parents, because if they didn't celebrate enough, the twins will feel unwelcome and go back to where they came from. So what the Europeans were doing and hitting Efik was to say, copy the example of your neighbors. You cannot continue to kill twins. As they moved up across river, they saw twins prospering and doing well. They say, this is a culture to be copied. And so when next you just talk and mention that people kill twins, go back to the primary record, and it will shock you that your people never killed twins. It's better to celebrate the achievement of our people than to just put them into a straitjacket which did not represent them. The Efik also turned to the liberated Africans. You see the number of slaves that were taken from here to Sierra Leone after slave trade had been abolished. So these people had been trained. They had received education. They received training in various aspects, in carpentry, in photography. So the Efik turned their attention since the missionaries were unable to fill the vacuum that was left by the slave trader. So they began to ask for the liberated Africans. The Niger Delta region, other communities, the Igbos, they refused the reintegration of slaves. But King Eyo, Honesty II, said they should come. They will look at them as white men because they have received white man fashion. Mrs. Goldie, some of them who returned, saw people who sold them into slavery. They were still alive. And they forgave them, telling them that they meant evil for them, but God had turned it into good. Individuals, they excel in trade. They did many things. So when you see streets like Oduaya, you see Donka, you see Bakri Davis, these are liberated slaves. People that were bought from here, British intercepted, took them to Freetown, and then they were brought back and continue also to contribute to the development of this state. And those streets are still living to this day. Quickly, domestic slavery. I will just explain it. You read it in your book. There is this argument that Atlantic slave trade happened because Africans were already enslaving themselves. It was because of the availability of slaves. They argue that they were people to be sold into the Atlantic traffic. That is not correct historically. There was no community in the crossover region that had a class referred to as slaves before Atlantic slave trade. What happened was that the Efik had acquired slaves which they sold to the Europeans. When abolition came, they were still having large number of slaves. If you read books, they will tell you the number of slaves outnumber free men. And what would they do with them? In Wada, their king, what he did was to kill all those that he had. He was so angry that he killed them. The Efik kings did not do so. The Europeans said they need palm oil. Who will produce palm oil? So they just diverted those slaves they could no longer sell into the establishment of plantation. So when you go to Akwabe, for example, there were palm plantations owned, established, managed by Efik kings. Today, it has grown to become a whole local government in Cross River State, with people living there and doing their trade. That was how slavery began. So it was the abolition of Atlantic slave trade that will lead to. Slave trade is operate in a capitalist economy. You must exploit somebody for something. We didn't find that in the pre-Atlantic slave trade era. For some communities, it was even the imposition of colonial rule that will bring about slavery. When colonial rule came and taxation was imposed, you must pay taxes in British currency. And for you to have British currency, you must have something to do with the British government. Either you were working in the court, you must have an occupation to do. But you must pay tax whether you had British money or not. So some of the people were taken to court for the inability to pay taxes. And the government will say, you are sentenced to 5 years in prison with hard labor, then there is an option for fine which you can pay. So these people will now appeal to those who were working for the British government. My brother, please, pay tax for me. Don't allow me go into prison. I may not come back alive. What will happen to my family? So the man will pay the taxes, and you begin to work for him to recover that. The European refers to all that as slavery. These were things that came on because of the presence of the Europeans and the policies that they brought. So when you read that book, you will understand this clearly, that domestic slavery did not exist among our people until abolition and the establishment of colonial rule. It is in an attempt to do what historians refer to as the blame game, to shift blame. That is when the Europeans will tell you, oh, they were already slaves, and we buy into it. We were not slaves. We didn't have slaves in the right sense of the word. Ethic agencies and the establishment of colonial rule. Let me summarize it with these pictures. Treaties that were signed in the interior district, pledging that whatever decision that is accepted by the EFIC was binding on them. The people did not understand what those treaties are. Go back and read those treaties written in impeccable English, and you ask yourself if they could write these treaties at the time we are talking. Let me read one, which was written by the Efut. We, the undersigned kings and chiefs of Efut, declare that we, our people and country, are subject to the authority and jurisdiction of the kings and chiefs. That is referring to the EFIC. That whatever decision the EFIC have taken is binding on them. Why will you say so? Because the EFIC had the political advantage. And it is this kind of blind loyalty that gave EFIC advantage. And over time they tell you, EFIC are oppressors, EFIC, they suppress others. If you have not known before, it was not the EFIC that named themselves EFIC. It was their neighbors that named them EFIC, from the Bible word, meaning oppressor, the one who oppresses his neighbors. When you read that book, you will understand how they oppressed them. Both in slave trade, in colonial time, religious things, they were sufficiently oppressed by the EFIC. So we have to have the courage. History is not to blame. History is just to let us get the appropriate lessons. That's why when people talk about recommendations, they are very strange to the historian. You should talk about lessons. What lessons can we learn from this? So is that we were colonized with the help of our own people. Without the EFIC political agents, the colonial enterprise in the crossover region will have been either frustrated or it will not have been as successful as it turned out to be. So these are the political agents. EFIC political agents have a very prestigious place in history. Let me discuss the best man policy. Best man policy, again, when colonial rule was established, people came from all over the hinterland places, from Ibibio, from Igbo, and settled here. And the Europeans said, we can no longer allow the EFIC rulers to dictate what happened, to manage the affairs of government here. It has to be all those that have converged here. Calabar has become a cosmopolitan city. So whether you were from here or not, it is immaterial. What is important is the abilities you have to contribute to development. So they refer to it as the best man policy. The EFIC argued that how can they, if anybody wants to participate in government, they want to do this, let them go back to wherever they had come from to go and be part of the government there. And the Europeans said, no, they are paying taxes here, and they must be part of administration. That argument went on and on. At the end of the day, the EFIC, the votes, and the course gave into the wind of change that was coming and said anybody who has the ability to contribute to development can become a member of the municipal council. It was a landmark decision. Its impact on the development of this city is irrepressible. That was why a man, a Ghanaian, like Atamunu, we know this street Atamunu, he was a Ghanaian. He was elected into the Legislative Council. After the subsequent elections that came, Calabar still presented candidate, but it was the non-Calabarian, according to Asukweyo, what he wrote, that won that election. And Asukweyo said, at the end of the day, every candidate did not even file themselves for election. It was other people that were elected. Several years, several decades, over a century later, what do we ask ourselves about the best man policy? The only criteria some people have, the only advantage they have, is that I am a son of the soil. Is that all you have? People want to contest for a little position as councillor. They say, go back to where you are coming from. Your parents were not from here. In the mid-20th century, people recognized that best man policy was for their interests. Today, it has boiled down to us. Even in the university, every tower, which should be exempted from this, it has crept into it. You can't find any federal university anywhere whose vice chancellor is not a member of that state. What has happened to best man policy? Recently, I heard that even to be student union government, SUG president, you must be from that state. What are we doing to ourselves? It's happening everywhere. Calabar was the spaceman, the seedbed where this was experimented. And not too long ago, we woke up to a drama that involved a lady who was supposed to be appointed, Ekpeme was to be appointed substantive chief judge. But what worked against her, despite the fact that she was born in this state, was that she was not from here. That position was given to somebody else, Justice Maurice Eneji, who had the advantage of birth. Irrespective of what the Judicial Council tried to do, it was not taken. We need to go back to the best man policy, because it is to the advantage of all of us. It is time that we de-emphasize where you come from and emphasize the abilities that you have. Around the world, great nations are attracting people that have abilities to contribute. The United States is as great as it is because of the diversity and the openness it has for people. You go to Europe, it's the same thing. So you can run election in the United States and win as a Nigeria. You can win in Britain as a Nigeria. But when you return home, you cannot win in another state where you are not from. How do we think we are going to grow? Atlantic history leaves us with this legacy. All nations around the Atlantic world that aspire to civilize must employ the best hand to manage their society affairs. And it was best man policy that helped Calabar. There is no place in the Atlantic world that you go and Calabar is not known. No place. Calabar became a name. Calabar became a phenomenon. Calabar became something outstanding in all parts of the world, as small as it is, because of the people that built it. Finally, I should say that the intercourse, yes. I still have plenty time. I thought my time was finished, but I'm going to rush. Yes, so Calabar played a very important role. If you see this figure, maybe I'll leave you with this, you read the book. Yeah, this is Calabar High School. Where is that school located? That school is in Brazil. It's named Calabar High School. You go to Cuba, you find Ekpe. Ekpe in Cuba is known as Abacoa. Go to Britain, important street, places, Calabar is named. on it. Scottish currency, you find Calabar on it, is to tell us that it was not a it was not a one-way traffic. It was a two-way traffic. Calabar embedded himself on the world. So the Atlantic did not only merely define Calabar, Calabar also defined the Atlantic. Conclusion. Calabar was never a passive stage for European ambition. It was an active architect of modernity. Its history is one of encounter and adaptation, of tragedy interwoven with triumph, a testimony to human resilience. The same waters that enriched its source also carry sons and daughters of our neighbors into bondage. The same encounters that open new horizons of civilization also show seas of dependency and loss. Within these paradoxes lies a history that is profound, layered, and deeply human, a history too distorted or forgotten. The role of the historian is not mainly to chronicle events, but to illuminate truth, to expose distortion, and to give voice to those whom history has silenced. Re-examine Calabar's past with rigor and empathy allow us to move beyond the stale myths towards understanding grounded in evidence. We must reject narrative that cast our ancestors as mere spectators in the drama of their own existence. Such men as King Eyo, Honesty II, great reformer, modernizer, statesman, need to be immortalized here. History calls on us to defend truth against distortion, to bring light where shadow linger, and to honor the secret covenant between scholarship and society. The historian can expose myths and distortion, but he cannot do beyond that. So what I have done is to expose us to some myths and distortion. Acknowledgements. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, no scholar ever walks alone. Though I've been the one speaking this afternoon, the journey that brought me here has been carried on the shoulders of many. First and foremost, I return all glory, honor, and praise to the Almighty God, the source of wisdom, strength, and inspiration, whose unfailing grace has guided every step of my life and scholarship. Without his divine light, this journey would have been impossible. With it, every challenge became a lesson, and every limitation a path to success. I owe eternal gratitude to my late mentor, teacher, and intellectual compass, Ambassador Professor Konede Oya, a towering intellect, consummate historian, and visionary who saw in me what I couldn't see myself. His close mentoring sharpened my imagination, deepened my sense of historical purpose, and refined my capacity for critical thinking. My deepest gratitude goes to my beloved wife, Juliet, my anchor, confidence, and pillar of strength. Her quiet sacrifices and steadfast devotion have sustained me through the most demanding session of my academic journey. Without her love, friendship, and support, my path would have been less fruitful. To our wonderful children, Bishunim, Enonim, Epeonim, and Akionim, your love, laughter, and curiosity bring me endless joy and remind me daily why I strive for excellence. You each hold a special place in the story of my life. In a very special way, I pay tribute to my beloved parents of blessed memory, Mr. Bernard Imbua and Mrs. Lucy Imbua, whose fame, discipline, moral gesture, and abiding love laid the foundation for all I have become. My father was a great disciplinarian who mastered the act of using both the carrot and the stick in raising his children, and I would not have become what I am today without his wisdom and fairness. I also extend profound gratitude to Mrs. Victoria Imbua, my stepmother, who continues to play the role of a caring and devoted mother in my life. I'm equally grateful to my wonderful siblings, Teresa, George, Christina, Macy, Moses, Silvanus, Agnes, and their spouses and others not mentioned, for their steadfast love, encouragement, and constant prayers. I owe heartfelt gratitude to distinguished Senator Professor Sandy Ojaono, a rare breed of intellect, compassion, and statesmanship, whose boundless love and generosity have been a pillar of strength in my journey. He has given me unhindered access to his heart and large resources, always responding with kindness and grace whenever I need it. His unceasing atmospheric gestures have assured me that I will never lack the means to pursue any noble or important endeavor. I owe profound and heartfelt gratitude to the Vice Chancellor of the University of Calabar, Professor Fran Rospan-Koobi, an extraordinary leader and a woman of uncommon vision, whose transformation stewardship continues to illuminate the path of excellence in our beloved university. In the same breath, I express my deep appreciation to the immediate past Vice Chancellor, Professor Zana Akpago, a visionary scholar, consummate administrator, brother, whose support, warmth, and brotherly encouragement have been a pillar of strength in my academic sojourn. And to His Excellency, Professor Evara Ejimot Isu, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Calabar, I owe a debt of gratitude that words can scarcely express. His singular act of faith and generosity changed the course of my life. As the best graduating student, I still recall with deep emotion how he embraced me at the convocation ceremony, and without solicitation or influence of any kind, announced my immediate employment as graduate assistant. A gesture rooted in merit, vision, and integrity. That defining moment laid the foundation for all that I've become today. For this, I shall remain eternally grateful. I owe profound gratitude to Professor Joseph Akawu, whose generosity and intervention opened the doors of the University of Calabar to me and set my scholarly journey in motion. Since then, he has continued to bless and guide and uplift me. I also thank Honorable Peter Kwanke, Barrister Mike Anya, Justice Emmanuel Lubwa, Professor Godwin Akeke, Isaac Ishamale, Mike Usher, Godwin Ashibashi, Anasha Kwanke, Florence Undiande, Gios Ingwe, Fidelis Ugabo, Chris Okaidi, Richard Oklala, Fidelis Inde, among others of my bendy brother. 1 minute, I'll be done. I owe immense gratitude to my teachers at various stages of my education, especially those who shaped my intellectual foundation in the Department of History and International Studies, including Professor Konede Uya, Erim Ekechiko, Winifred Akoda, Ofiambia, Patience Eri, Michael Bonchu, Clement Imbada, Poipa Egbe, Edunam, and James Ewa. Let me also acknowledge Professor Grace Robin Etuk, under whom I took an elective course that deeply inspired and motivated me. Sincerely acknowledge my colleagues in the Faculty of Art, especially my Dean, Professor Chikeke Okwara, Dr. Maxwell Eba, Professor James Okpelia, Edome Yambri, and Oti Egbai Chris Akpa, Professor Chris Wamo, and Andrew A. Rome Abo, Samson Izwagi, Veronica Ode, Gospel Dogume, Estin Oba, Eta Gloria Egriokon, among others. I'm grateful to Paul Lovejoy. I'm grateful to Obong, who read my citation this afternoon. Obong is a great scholar in his own right, serving as Commissioner for Education at Akwa Ibom State, with whom I have shared countless pleasant memories. And to my acknowledgement, there is no end. Thank you all for coming, and God bless you. I will drink this one.
Hello. Okay. Please, may we be seated? Water no be land. You must pick something from each inaugural lecture you attend. I heard it today, water no be land. Indeed, our inaugural lecturer this evening has actually done justice to the topic. Very interesting topic, and his presentation made it more interesting. And I told him I was going to give him a query for taking more than his own time. When I wear my shoe as registrar, I can write to the inaugural lecturer, but your sins are forgiven. So his topic is Calabar in the Atlantic Mirror, myths, misconceptions, and realities. And we have indeed seen that there are differences, not just one. He gave us several examples to prove that the myths are different from misconceptions and also different from the reality. For instance, I picked this one home. The stoppage of killing of twins did not start with Mary Slessor. I was one of those who used to advocate that. But today I've learned something in addition. Please let's celebrate our inaugural lecturer again. God bless you, sir. Thank you for opening our eyes more. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, without waste of time, permit me to invite again the Vice Chancellor and Chairman of this occasion, ably represented by our DVC, Research, Linkages and Collaboration, Professor Peter Okafor, to step forward for presentation of the lecture notes by the inaugural lecturer and appreciation of the lecturer by exchange of mementos.
From Vice Chancellor, here represented by the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Linkages and Collaboration, Professor Peter Okafor. It's my pleasure to present to you a copy of the 151st Inaugural Lecture of the University of Calabar.
Thank you very much, Professor Dave Imbua. You've done justice to the topic. And so I will want to present on behalf of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Calabar and the members of the Senate of the University of Calabar, I want to present this memento to you, Professor David Imbua, Professor of Atlantic History and Diaspora Studies, as the 151st Inaugural Lecturer of the University of Calabar, signed by Professor Florence Banko Obi, today, 20th November 2025. Congratulations.
Let me at this point invite the Chairman, Committee of Deans, Professor Enanguda, to give a vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Professor David. And from today, you are now Professor with a capital P. This seamless historical narrative of the beacons of Efik Kingdom was indeed deep. For the myths are exposed. One, just like the registrar said, we had long thought that it was Maurice Laser, but it was a combination of efforts. But those efforts were long lost in the annals of history. But thank God you have resurrected them. And probably you need to write to the state government to change the narrative. And then bring in those who contributed in stopping the killing of twins. Yes, indeed, in your lecture, there are misconceptions. But the realities are that the Efiks were very smart and intelligent people. For even when slaves were abolished, they converted their own slaves to work in the palms and still make money for themselves. So it shows that with the lessons, like you said, we can learn from this narrative. Thank you very much for this historical exposition, for indeed we have learned a lot. Thank you, the Vice Chancellor, for providing the platform for all of us to present our inaugural lecture. Thank you, the registrar. Thank you, the deans who are here, especially the Dean of Faculty of Arts, Professor Chike Ekiokpara. And I would not thank the head of the department because you are the head of department. I want to thank the DVC academic that is here, and want to thank the provosts who are here. I've seen them. We also want to, Professor Okafor, it looks like we have the same trajectory. Professor Everesu was the one that employed me. Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. And I'm sure you are not disappointed. And it was Professor Zana Akbago, my Oga forever, that pronounced me as professor. So when I say we are twins, I'm not missing words. We want to thank the friends. We also want to thank Senator, who is here present, the citation reader. Thank you very much for, probably you came from the water or the road. We are driving government vehicles, so you can use the road. Thank you for coming, whichever way you came. Thank you. We want to appreciate all of you who came here in their numbers, the heads, different heads of department, the senators, and all of you who robed in this beautiful attire. You are deeply appreciated. The development division, we thank you. Protocol, information, we thank you very much for putting all this together. I turn to the family. Madam, I'm very sure you are proud of your husband. He has achieved a lot. Those sleepless nights, and you tolerated him and provided the environment for him to thrive. Thank you very much. For the lovely children, thank you. I hope you grow up to be better than your father, because that's the desire of every parent, that they should come and be better than them. We thank all of you for coming, and we are having another inaugural lecture, I think next week, so ask that you also come. Thank you very much, and God bless you as you return back to their various abodes.
As we come to the end of this exercise, permit me also to add this. I was also employed by His Excellency, Professor Ivara Ejemot Esu. So in your time, you brought in great men and women into University of Calabar. God bless you. You are indeed an Abraham of our time. The stars are still shining. The stars you brought, none has disappointed you. Please, have I been a disappointment, sir? Let's celebrate our father. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for bringing us into University of Calabar. As we come to the end of this exercise, permit me once again to call on the chairman of this occasion, ably represented by our DVC, Professor Peter Okafor, to make his closing remarks.
Thank you very much. I have learned a lot today. One thing I learned is that the ethics protected their own. Others sold their own, but the ethics protected their own. And the inaugural lecturer said they don't use recommendations in history. However, permit me to therefore recommend that since the ethics protected their own and they were not slaves and sold into slavery, the South also should learn from history and protect their own based on what is happening in Nigeria today. We are accusing the ethics and say there should be reparation. Please also note, and I believe, that there were local merchants among the non-ethics from their own community, local merchants among the non-ethics, who sold their people to the ethics and to the Europeans. Our education today, he said, is still education of servanthood, and not education of invention and education of development. We should change that. And another thing I also learned from him that please, we should change. If Professor Evarisu didn't have a good mindset, maybe he wouldn't have brought me, a core Igbo man, into this community. And also, the Senate of the University of Calabar wouldn't have elected me unanimously as a DVC Research Linkages and Collaboration, a man from Anambra State. So I strongly believe that one thing we should do, every one of us, is to remove Emilokon from our dictionary. Because it is the turn of all Nigerians. And then we need to go back to the best man policy. So ladies and gentlemen, my brother, the 151st Inaugural Lecturer, has done justice to his topic. Now we can see through the Atlantic mirror. And I believe the mirror is very bright indeed. Thank you very much for coming. May I appreciate everybody here for coming. And once again, I'm not tired of appreciating His Excellency, Professor Evarisu, because I applied for this job for over 4 or 5 times. It was the final one that my mentor, Professor U.J. Ekpe, submitted, and that led to my being invited for interview, and I was accepted as a lecturer of this university. I believe I was told that after the interview, His Excellency asked, why didn't you people employ this man since? The response that he got from my professor, who answered sincerely from his heart, is that he's an Unege. And he brought me in, irrespective of where I come from. I won't tired to appreciate Professor Zana Akbago. I worked with him in a lot of committees, and it is true. Even when he was Vice Chancellor, people said certain things about him. But there's only one thing I kept telling them. He did not withhold my promotion. He promoted me as a professor. For that, I am very grateful to you, sir. May God continue to bless you. The caterpillar, my very good friend and brother and senior colleague, Professor Sandy Onu, you're welcome. May God bless you. May God bless every one of you for coming, and I wish you great blessings from above in Jesus' name. Before I take my seat, permit me to introduce somebody so close to me. They call him UL. When they call him UL, I used to think UL was her pet name or first name, until somebody told me UL means the university librarian. I didn't know. So I was not calling her UL. I will only call her Prof. Aniebet. But when they told me that UL means university librarian, since then I started calling her UL. And each time I call her UL, she will smile, just like she's smiling now. UL is going to be the next inaugural lecturer. She will teach us how to be a librarian. And UL, if you don't know, is one of the best university librarians in Nigeria. With the help of UL, University of Calabar has not lost any accreditation. The worst we have had was interim accreditation. She has assisted us that other librarians refer to him as the best librarian in Nigeria. And a lot of them have been trying to woo her to join other institutions. But for the love she has for my alma mater, the University of Calabar, she's still here. So come next week, Wednesday, that's the 25th, she will be presenting our inaugural. Please, let's support him in Jesus' name. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we put our hands together for the Vice Chancellor representative? Thank you so much. Just like he just said, we will be gathering like this on November 25th. Listen to our 152nd inaugural lecturer. His introducer, the University Librarian, Professor Aniebet Ntui. So please be gathered here, same time, same venue. We have come to the end of the 151st Inaugural Lecture. And so please, my request, members of the high table, to please step down for 3 segments of photograph. The first one will be strictly members of the high table. Second, with members of the family. Thirdly, with former vice chancellors, citation reader, and Professor Sandy Onokata. Please don't leave the hall. We are not done yet. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Listen, them say, them tell you say you can never be the one. But God say, make I tell you say now you him choose in 1 month, in 1 week. You will sing a new song in 2 days, lesser than you will hear. Congratulations.
Group photograph, members of the high table, please. Group photograph, members of the high table first.
He has done it for you.
Principal officers,
And
join
you
them.
will come
Thank you so
back
much.
with a new song to sing. God is good. Yes, you will come again with a new song of praise. God is good.
Inaugural lecturer, please, your attention is needed.
Congratulations.
Paparazzis, please, can you go ahead? Paparazzis, can we have the group photograph? Thank you so much. Group photograph first. Group photograph. Group photograph. Please, can we clear the way? Thank you. Can you make way? Group photograph.
Them say that I can never be all that.
Please, can you make way? Thank you. Group photograph. Can we have the wife and children join them? Thank you so much. The wife, Dr. Mrs. Dave Imbua, please join them with your children. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please, all pleasantries to be suspended. Wife and children, can you join them with a snapshot? Are we good to go? Please, can you make way? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Can we have former vice chancellor join them? Professor Zana, immediate past vice chancellor. Can you please join in the group photograph? His Excellency Professor Ibarra, please join them. Can we have a Professor Simon, please join them. Citation reader, please join them. Can you please make way? Thank you so much. Can we have space in front and clear the aisle? Thank you. Thank you for your love and support. Please create space. Thank you so much. Madam White. Can we please rise? Can we rise and take the University of Calabar? Please remain where you are. No movement. Thank you.
Neath the broad expanse of Nigeria's sky stands a school with a vision bright, ever holding the banner of
is University of Calabar anthem, sung by Glorio Sang, Ashiwe Joseph, Ruth Ejiro Tega, Brownson and Ebet, album So Easy. This is courtesy of Egu Daniel Ifeshikude, aka SUG, Director of Socials in Abubu Anthony Lay.
When the praises go up, the glory comes down. When the praises go up, I'm never the same. When the praises go up, the glory comes down. When the praises go up, my life is never the same. I've seen that God is greater than that. Who can buy?